Should the Atlanta Braves be aggressive and go ahead and lock up Drake Baldwin to a contract extension? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into a special bonus edition of Braves Today. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. And you can find all my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started today. One of the biggest stories for Atlanta this season, in this young season, other than the starting rotation being a lot better than I think many in the national media thought it would be, given all the injuries, is Drake Baldwin. He had a very good season last year to win Rookie of the Year. 3.1 WAR after hitting 274 with a 341 on base, 469 slug, right? An 810 OPS from a rookie is nothing to sneeze at, but especially at catcher, one of the more demanding positions physically and mentally because of having to guide your pitchers and learn a whole staff, guide them through a game, all the extra responsibilities we throw on catcher. But in the first 19 games of 2026, I think he's done a very good job of staving off any talk of a sophomore slump. Drake Baldwin, going into the off day on Thursday, is hitting 321 with a 935 OPS. He had 19 homers in 124 games last year. He already has 5 home runs in just 19 games this year. And his 19 runs scored is tied for the major league lead. I mean, he's batting the second spot in the order. He hasn't missed a game because he DHs against left-handed pitching, so to keep his bat in the lineup. Will he continue to play at this pace? Probably not. Most catchers don't play 162 games. But if this offensive pattern keeps up, even with some moderate regression, you're looking at a season where, he could put up 25 home runs. If he has 5 and 86 plate appearances and he gets 500 this year, it's a very, very valuable catcher. And again, he's already been valuable this year. 0.9 WAR already on the year. When you look at the leaderboard, he's tied for 13th in baseball not among position players, among all players with 0.9 WAR. He's tied with Matt Olson. He's tied with starter Jose Soriano of the Angels. And above him are a who's who of some of the best performing players so far in baseball. Shohei Ohtani, Yordan Alvarez. Just very good players above him who are having electric starts to their season. So let's go through the case. Let's go through why you would want to extend him. And let's go through why maybe this is a little bit too early or some of the danger of doing it. Because I think the default answer is yes, you want to extend him. Braves fans want him to be here. Let's talk about the reasons to do it and to not do it. The number one reason to extend Drake Baldwin from a baseball perspective is the value. The cost certainty doesn't hurt, right? He's going to be arbitration eligible after the 2027 season. And so it could be 3 years. We're getting to if it'll be 3 years or not, of variable salaries before he would become a free agent. So extending him would lock in a specific salary for those years. So a little bit of cost certainty. You know what your payroll is going to be down to the penny going forward because the Braves don't do performance incentives in their contracts. They just don't. So because of that, you would know what your payroll is. But the real reason would be value. In free agency, you have to, and this sounds obvious, but just listen real quick. You have to pay more money the more valuable a player is. And what I'm trying to say by that, it's not very eloquent, is it is easier and cheaper to find a player that can give you 2 wins above replacement than it is to find a player that can give you 4 wins above replacement, both in the total value of the deal and how much you're paying per win above replacement. The ballpark estimate here is about $11 million per 1 WAR a free agent would generate for you. Now, and again, a guy that's producing 1 WAR is probably not making $11 million. But a guy who's making per WAR, but a guy who's making 5 WAR is costing a lot more than 11. That's what I'm trying to say. And we can just stick with the 11 million per WAR projection, understanding that guys who can hit 5 and 6 make a lot more, right? Drake Baldwin just last year alone was 3 WAR, which comes out to roughly $35 million in value. And the Braves paid him the league minimum, right? He made $760,000 or so. Now, I do want to point out that he did receive additional financial compensation last year. The pre-arbitration bonus pool, it was put in place in the last CBA negotiation. It rewards pre-arbitration players for both overall performance and winning awards. So he got $750,000 from that pool for winning Rookie of the Year, and he got another $425,583 based on the amount of WAR he put up. So rather than just making that $760,000, he made just about $2 million last year, just under $2 million last year. But even there, that's still a value on the cost of 3.1 WAR if the Braves were to sign it in free agency. And the Braves didn't have to pay all of that. The Braves contribute to that bonus pool, but the money that actually came to Drake Baldwin came from the league. So that wasn't a payroll expense for Atlanta. If the Braves think that Drake Baldwin could be on a trajectory to be a 5 WAR player, then that is the type of player that gets top of market salaries in free agency. And if you can lock that up now at a cost that would be lower than $55 million or $60 million, which is the value of that in free agency, you're going to make money. And by make money, I mean you're going to have excess value there. You're going to have surplus value. That's how you build a winning roster, is by paying less for the value that you're getting than what it would cost to get it in free agency, and then reallocate those dollars elsewhere. That's why the Braves have been so aggressive at paying relievers to stretch out and become starters, because they're paying them reliever salaries, but they're getting starter production and there's surplus value in there. And they can then use the rest of the money that they would have had to spend had they gone out and signed a standard starter. They can then use that money to go add a bullpen piece or to do something else, right? That's kind of Atlanta's whole thing. And AA's whole thing when he builds this roster is, let's unlock some value, right? Let's lock in some surplus value so that we can go do that. And a lot of Atlanta's early extensions were in that same boat. Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris, they all signed at the age of 22 with less than 2 years of service time. Because the Braves, and it looks like at least in the case of Ronald and Ozzie, and I still believe in Harris too, they were correct that they were able to unlock excess value there, because those players, Ronald put up an MVP caliber season. That season alone, from a cost per WAR perspective, would have cost his entire contract just about. They locked up Spencer Strider at the age of 24 with less than 2 years of service time. There's a warning sign there. I'll get to that in a minute. Austin Riley was 26. He was the only one who's both older than Baldwin is now and had more than 2 years of service time when he signed the deal. But that's the big argument is, hey, lock in some long-term value. And I do think also there's also the added benefit of the Braves have seen some players leave, whether it was via trade, William Contreras, Shea Langoliers, they're two of the most valuable catchers in baseball this season, like right behind Drake Baldwin, or in free agency like Max Fried, Dansby Swanson, Freddie Freeman. And so signing a player to a long-term extension would be a way to, because give Braves fans some reassurances they're not going to lose this talented young player in a couple seasons to free agency. And I do think the specter of losing him to free agency and when that could be is another factor that needs to be discussed. We'll do that next right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. I am a little bit concerned when the response to should we sign Drake Baldwin to a contract extension. I'm a little bit concerned when the response is you have 5 more years of team control. Why would you do that? And I understand the argument. I understand the idea of it'll be this season, 26 and 27 at league minimum salaries, and then 3 years of arbitration, which you can only earn so much in arbitration. It's not unlimited money, right? Before he would become a free agent. But I think there's a big assumption there. And the big assumption there is that the new CBA negotiation that'll take place after this season does not have any sort of changes to the team control system. The way it works now is teams have 6 years of control over you before free agency. And that's measured by service time, so it could stretch out into 7 seasons if a team waits to promote you until a certain point. Won't come up for Baldwin. He got a full year of service time last year, but it's based on a service time calculation, and so 6 seasons of team control. If that system makes it through the next negotiation intact, then yes, you are right that extending Baldwin may be premature and spending more money than you have to do. But the owners have indicated, so far, everything that we know, that there is going to be a much more concentrated push for wholesale and large-scale financial changes to the financial net framework that the game plays under. And while I am personally skeptical that you will actually see a salary cap and floor instituted, because the players have been, like, the one thing they have been united and dead set against since CBA negotiating began, with the very first one, has been a salary cap. And there are enough owners who don't want a salary floor in place, which is what would be required, that I just don't think that's going to happen. I do think you're going to see some sort of enhanced penalties at the top to try to constrain spending on the high end. And I do think you're going to see some sort of combination of incentives and penalties at the bottom to lift spending at the very bottom. And it's possible that some of the trade-off here may be a shorter path to free agency. It may not be 6 years to become a free agent. It may be 4. It may be 2 years of team control, 2 years of arbitration. It may be 3 years of team control, 2 years of arbitration, and be 5 years of free agency. Like, there may be different ways that this works. And so I don't think you can just say, well, the Braves automatically, have him for 5 more years. No need to do it, because we don't know that that's still going to be true after this year. Can you imagine a scenario where you finish this and you're like, hey, after the 26th season, we've got 4 more years of control. And then after this negotiation goes, all of a sudden you open up and it's 2 years? Or maybe there's a very extreme, maybe a cap and floor does go in place, but the players get a massive concession and it's 3 years to free agency. And all of a sudden, this is your final season with Drake Baldwin. That's part of the reason why I think these teams are locking up these young players. One, they're trying to secure the excess value because they think these are all like top 15 prospects in baseball. They think these players will be stars. But also, they're negotiating off of the current framework of 6 years of team control, and they're buying out 2 or 3 free agency years. And then if what happens is that path is shortened, now they've bought out, say it goes to 4 years of team control, they've bought out 5 free agent years at the cost of 3. I think that's the other part of it. I think you can learn from some of these teams that what is it coming down the pipe, what they expect to happen. But the other reason to be a little cautious here is the Sean Murphy situation I mentioned earlier. When Atlanta got him, they traded for him. They signed him to a 6-year, $73 million extension. This is ahead of the 2023 season. It bought out 3 arbitration years, and it bought out 3 free agent years. The arbitration years were valued at $4 million, $9 million, and $15 million. And this year is the first of the 3 free agent years. And he's making $15 million in each season. He's, from a value perspective, he has matched what he's been at least worth his salary every season. 2024, $9 million salary. He produced 0.8 WAR. It comes out, if you use the $11 million valuation, it comes out roughly even there. The other 2 seasons, last year, $15 million salary, 2 WAR. 2023, $4 million salary, 5 WAR. He's matched the value. But the warning thing here is he's also been injured. And Spencer Strider signed his deal, and he's been injured. Those 2 players are signed to a combined $148 million across 12 years, and they have missed significant time in recent seasons. And so because of that, I think the desire to sign a starting pitcher like a Spencer Schwellenbach or a Herson Waldrop to an extension has gone away because of the injury potential and how much money Atlanta had on the shelf with Spencer Strider being down for 24 and part of 25. And part of 26, actually. Catcher is the most physically demanding non-pitching position. So is that reluctance to spend money going to extend there too? When again, the last guy you signed there, and you have $15 million annually tied up in Sean Murphy. Do you want to commit a second significant salary to the same position? So like that's a decision you have to figure out. There's pros and cons here. I do think ultimately the Braves should probably do this. Now that there is no set designated hitter, they have the flexibility to play Drake Baldwin not only behind the plate, but also at DH. I do think at this point, you've passed what a smaller extension would look like. There's been some catchers that have signed deals recently. Samuel Basayo, as a prospect with the Orioles, signed 8 years, $67 million. Keibert Ruiz signed just after a year in the majors, 8 years, $50 million. I think you've passed a lot of that. Cal Raleigh's 5 years, $99.4 million. Alejandro Kirk was 5 years, $58 million. You're probably closer to the Cal Raleigh end of this than you are the Alejandro Kirk or Keibert Ruiz or Samuel Basayo end of this. You're probably signing him. He's got, you assume, 5 years of team control left. So the length is probably something like the Ruiz or the Basayo, but the money is probably pretty close to $20 million a year by the time you, or more, or that 22 Atlanta max, by the time you get towards the end of the deal. The Will Smith extension, 9 years, $131.5 million. That might be something close to what you end up needing to do if you want to sign Drake Baldwin to a deal. He's already 25 years old. Smith signed that in March of 2024 at the age of 29 to take him through his age 37 season. Is that the deal you want to lock Baldwin into? And maybe an 8 or 9 year deal does make a lot of sense for Drake Baldwin because the trajectory that he's on could legitimately be an MVP trajectory. Braves Today sponsor FanDuel right now has him at plus 6,000 to win the National League MVP. So he is tied for 15th best odds in all of baseball. He's the top catcher on the board. He's ahead of Will Smith. He's ahead of William Contreras in the National League. And everybody above him is a who's who of the best players in baseball. Shohei Ohtani, Ronald Acuna Jr., Fernando Tatis, Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Freddie Freeman, Kyle Tucker. Like, he's in that group of players based on the first 19 games of the season. If he legitimately is that caliber of player, that superstar level, then maybe, yeah, you do need to sign him for 8 or 9 years and understand that you're going to be using the DH spot a bit on him as he gets into his 30s. But that offensive production absolutely would be worth it. This is legitimately, I think, a tough decision. The gut instinct is to say, yes, sign him. But I think at the end of the day, there's a lot to consider here. How much money you'd lock up at one position, the injury risk at that position, and the fact that if you look at the trajectory that he is on, you're probably going to need, one, for value reasons and everything, you're probably going to need to do 7 or more years on this deal, and it's going to need to be close to $15 to $20 million per. Do you want to do this? Let me know what you think. You can leave it down in the comments or social media. I'm at Crosby Baseball. The show is at Braves_today or Braves Today Pod on most different social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, all of that. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.